Okay, I'm a glass half full kind of girl. Even when I'm hit by a car at 18 and I know I am never going to walk again, I feel like my glass is half full. Even with years of physical rehab before me, ahead of me, hard physical, mental, spiritual work, my glass is half full. My saving grace in rehab is my curiosity for people. So many different people, so many stories about crazy ass risk or being at the wrong place at the wrong time or just pure bad luck. I find it morbidly fascinating. I'm 19 years old and it's 9 months after my accident. I'm working at the table in the occupational therapy room in the physical rehab center in Montreal. I'm always working at the table because, well, I don't really have a whole lot of upper body movement. My focus is on doing things with my hands without finger dexterity. Little things that are really big to me, like brushing my teeth or putting on eyeliner without poking out my eyeballs. Today, I'm working on my writing. It's going to take a lot of guts and grit to get this job done, but I'm always up for a challenge. I found the right adaptation to hold my pen between my index finger and my thumb at the base of my palm. And I use my teeth to pull the strap tight so I have better control. Right now, I'm looking for that little muscle at the back of my shoulder that if I can locate it and learn to control it, I will be able to do a smooth cursive O. There's a change in the air, a big movement as somebody rolls into the door, rolls in through the door into the room. It's Mark. And he's late again. Mark's the little guy in a manual wheelchair. He's older than me, maybe 30, and he lives a couple doors down from me on the second floor. Mark's injury is one vertebrae lower than mine. One. That means he has triceps to develop. In this game, triceps matter. That means he'll be able to learn to dress himself, transfer into a car or into the shower. Mark's one of the lucky ones. But don't tell him that. Mark might be strong and fast, but Mark is rude. He's loud. He's mean to the orderlies and to his therapist and his therapist. I swear I can see a dark cloud hanging over his head wherever he goes. I go back to my O's. Calisse de tabarnak, I hear from the other side of the room, which loosely translated from French means fuck, fuck, fuck. I look to the other side of the room, to the corner. There's a frame of a car where people try to practice their transfers. Mark is doing just that. And it looks really hard. This is something I'm never going to be able to do. I start a row of P's. And then 15 minutes in, there's applause, there's cheers. Mark's done it. He's transferred into the car. He's sitting into the driver's seat and he has his hands at 10 and 2 on the steering wheel. He's done it. I'm amazed. You know what this means? 6 months after this guy's out of here, he's going to be He's going to have an adapted van. He's going to be able to hit the road and go wherever he wants. Anywhere, somewhere, anywhere. What I would do with triceps. I tackle a row of cues. And then I've been so focused, he's sitting beside me. He's just reversed the process. And he's sitting beside me back in his chair, and I can tell he's really tired. Hey, Mark, I say, congratulations. That's really cool. You did your first transfer into a car. He scoffs. I don't get it. I'm happier for him than he is for himself. Mark leans in and says, you're working really hard on your writing, Madeleine. Why bother? Here's the thing, I say. When I had my accident, my mom got power of attorney over me. And I'm going to reverse that. I'm going to be as independent as possible. If I can write, I can sign my name. And if I can sign, I can make my own legal, medical, financial decisions. I don't need my mother for that. Besides, I say, I like to write lists and stories. Maybe someday I'm going to write something good. He scoffs again. We're wasting our time. You know, chances are we're going to be both dead before we're 40. Just ask your doctor. The doctors say they're going to miss some kind of infection or something, and you go septic and die, or some weird cancer is going to eat you from the inside out. Let me tell you this. If I get cancer, no treatment for me. Fuck it. I'm out of here. Well, I'm astonished. I've never heard this before. Suicide by cancer? Oh my God, this guy has no imagination. I could think of 5 quick ways to get out of here off the top of my head without even thinking very hard. I look over at Mark to see what I'm dealing with. I see past his suffering, his frustration and his anger. Mark's eyes are dark. They're empty. Today, 35 years later, I meet my friend Sherry in the city for a visit. Sherry's my old roommate from rehab from back in the day. We settle on her back patio to watch the sun setting over the mountains northwest of the city. It's really quite a picture. 2 old quads, older quads with a few gray hairs, soaking up the late day sun in our wheelchairs, sipping red wine through a straw, catching up. We talk about our lives, our partners, our kids, our latest projects and trips. It's so good to be together after so long. Hey, I say, whatever happened to that guy, Mark? Sherry looks surprised. She said, oh, I thought you knew he's dead. Oh, ages ago. You must have been busy having babies or making babies or something. He must have been in his early 40s of pancreatic cancer, I think. I look into my glass and reflect. Mark's dead, and my glass is still half full. When I focus on what's there, it's usually enough. When I'm grateful for what's left, surprisingly, abundance follows. Sometimes even, I feel like I need to get a bigger glass. There you go. Thank you.
Thanks, Madeleine. Boy, you sort of went full circle with that story. Well done. Madeleine's pretty new to storytelling too, just FYI. So Good for you. You're not even new anymore. You're not even new anymore.
I don't know what's new anymore.
You're not new anymore. You've been around the block a few times.
Well, it's
And
still under a year.
yeah. And you're doing it. You're putting the stories together, you're putting them out there, and you're telling stories now that are like, I mean, not that you ever held back. You're like, nah, I'm gonna go there. So I appreciate that. I'd imagine others do too.
Thank you.
Yeah. Let me ask you a question, if I will. And then what we usually do is we wait until everyone tells their stories, and then we sort of talk about them in as much as you're comfortable. But a general question I have for you is, when you first started talking about your accident, that wasn't that long ago in story form, right? It wasn't, that was recent.
Yeah, I did one on Soul Stories in September. And it was about me lying in bed in a coma and what was going on.
So, and now you've told this one, there may have been others.
There
So
were
like,
others.
are you starting to get people to like giving you feedback and saying like, I don't know if it's positive feedback, not like just the fact that you're sharing a story that's like, oof, like big, right?
Yeah. Yes, people are grateful for going deep. They want me to go deeper and deeper and deeper. And
Yeah.
so there seems to be a few things that I like to keep private, but
Sure.
but now I'm going I'm going there.
That's cool. I'm glad you get that feedback, because it's like fuel in a way, at least for me. Because some of
Yes.
these stories are hard. Yeah. Well, I appreciate you sharing that. Thank you. And for going first.
Oh, well, you're welcome.
All right. Just want to say hey to Steph and Andrew. I hear you. I see you. I acknowledge you. Thanks for being here.
Thank
All right, you
you.
almost. Hey, Steph and Andrew. I think it was my fault. I didn't send you the link earlier. You missed part of Madeleine's great story. She went first. I know you know Madeleine. And next up is Erica on the West Coast. I'm not going to say anything about this. I know a little bit about it because we talked for the podcast. So I'll just like stop talking and let you do your thing. Is that cool?
Yeah, cool.
Awesome.
All right. It's 1993 and I'm 17 years old and all my dreams are coming true. I'm accepted to New York University. I put my volatile childhood behind me and I moved from Philadelphia to Manhattan, determined to become a Broadway star. I'm given a piece of advice from a veteran New Yorker. They say, in New York City, be like an exclamation point, not like a question mark. I take this advice to heart and I set out on my New York journey with excitement and enthusiasm and without doubt. And it's not long before it begins to pay off. I'm cast in one of the most esteemed play festivals in the country. I shoot a short film in Amsterdam. I'm having meetings with managers and agents and casting directors, and I am on my way. But after almost a decade of pursuit, I find myself stuck in almost making it. And I'm getting older and the opportunities and my confidence are drying up. My boyfriend, who I love with every ounce of my being, he's a drummer in an indie rock band, and his career begins to start taking off. And it's really hard for me because he's my main emotional support, and I'm estranged from my family, and I've been isolating from my friends. But then, just when I think all is lost, I'm cast in a reality television show. And the executive producers are Madonna and Oprah. I am dedicated to delivering compelling television. My life is being filmed and broadcast 24 hours a day live. I preach on street corners about defeating evil political agenda. I push a shopping cart filled with trash that I had collected. And with this trash, I was going to build a huge art installation called Hoot Hoot, Don't Pollute. And I remember lying down in the middle of a heavily trafficked intersection, crying out to the director, that I was exhausted. Cut, cue the extras. I can't take it anymore. See, I wasn't on a reality show. I was actually in the middle of a bipolar episode, and the show was a figment of my psychosis. My boyfriend didn't understand. He left me. I lost my job, ran out of money, was evicted from my apartment. A friend from all the way across the country in Los Angeles offered me to go and stay with her. She didn't understand the full extent of what was going on with my mental health. And so I flew out to Los Angeles, still expecting the red carpet to be waiting for me. Not long after my arrival at my friend's, she found me crying, having taken a fistful of tranquilizers and washed it down with a bottle of wine, that I wanted to die. She rushed me to the emergency room, where they kept me at the hospital for a couple of weeks, my mood still bouncing high and low. A social worker helped arrange for me to move to a recovery home for the homeless with mental illness, funded by Los Angeles County Department of Mental Health. It was called the Harbor, a metaphor, I suppose, shelter from the raging rainstorm that was my bipolar illness, in which I was dangerously dancing in my madness. At the Harbor, there were 10 or so other residents, and there were social workers on site, and we had group therapy and individualized therapy. We had a psychiatrist, and we learned medication management, and we learned how to manage and accept our diagnosis. We went on outings to Hollywood Boulevard, and we had chores like cleaning the house and cooking for one another. And I was improving with these services. But let me tell you, it is really depressing finding out you're not famous. This one night, I was very depressed. It was my night to cook, and it was shopping night. Harriet, my favorite caretaker there, announced, "It's shopping time." And we all piled into the van, and I shrunk low in my seat, knowing passerbys would see me and everyone else as a bunch of wackos. I wasn't one of those people. We got to the market, and I grabbed the easiest things I could think of. Harriet, the caretaker, recommended that I try and pick out something more special and give it another try. And so I pushed my shopping cart through the market, sane enough now to know what to use the cart for, feeling nostalgic for my old life, for the feasts I used to make for my boyfriend and friends. I filled my cart. When I got back to the Harbor, I flipped on the radio station to the oldies, and I sang and I danced about as I chopped and I diced, and the garlic sizzled in the pan, and the peppers roasted to perfection, and the sauce thickened in the pot. I was making penne della casa, penne of the house, a dish I had learned to make at a cafe where I had worked for 8 years before my mind began to unravel. I finished just as the dinner bell rang, and I set the food out on the table for all the other residents. But without the activity of cooking, my mood sunk, and I looked around at these strangers, and I longed for my old life, for my friends who were having career success, getting married, having babies, while I was here, stuck, and mental illness felt like a death sentence. And then I heard someone clear their throat, and I look up and I see it's Gary. Gary had been chronically homeless and had a form of schizophrenia. And he announces, "Erica, this is like a 5-star hotel meal. Thank you." Gary's reaction was an awakening. I had been so focused on what I had lost. I was blind to what I had found, a new community and a second chance. It's been 17 years since I left the harbor. It hasn't been a straight line, but I found a lifeline in teaching elementary school. And when I walk down the hallways and the students call out, "Hi, Miss Erica, hi, Miss Erica," like I'm some kind of star and bound into the classroom, so eager to learn. Sure, I may not be the type of star I dreamed of all those years ago. It's taken another form, one which I am grateful to have the opportunity to help guide them as they discover their purpose. When I worry that I'll have another breakdown, I remember Gary and the harbor and the optimism my experiences there instilled within me, a rebellion against darkness, and the resolve to rejoice in my recovery, no matter how stormy of a day. Because what I know to be true is that with services provided like the harbor, people can come back from that place as I came back. Thank you.
Thank you, Erica. Do you
Thank
want to stay muted? No, yeah.
Oh, no.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you so much. And you told that story up at NAMI, right? How was that?
I didn't mess up once, which I did a few times during this, but hopefully I recovered. It went as well as I could have hoped for. It went better than I had imagined. And it was really powerful to be with all the other storytellers and hear everybody's stories live. And the coach was, it was just, and it was just great. And it was great to be out and about. I isolated hardcore during the pandemic. So this was a real.
Just for people that might not know it and perhaps could even apply to it in the future, what is it exactly that you went to?
Sure. So the National Alliance for Mental Illness of Washington, they put on a yearly fundraiser called the Brain Power Chronicles. And this year, they opened it up for auditions all over the country. So everything was virtual until the rehearsal. And we had like a writing coach, and she was our director. And then it was a fundraiser at a big theater right outside Seattle.
Were you nervous?
I'm always nervous. It's part of my jam. Like even when I was an actress, even when I know I'm so prepared, when I'm not nervous, I get like worried.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's a problem. Yeah. Well, I'm glad it went well. That's great.
Thank you.
It's really good. Yeah. Thanks again for telling the story. All right, let's keep rolling. We got two more. If anyone wants to hop in after our fourth storyteller, who goes by J, by the way. She's our final storyteller. And if someone wants to hop in afterwards, that's cool. Or even if it's something a little more casual, like it doesn't have to necessarily be like story.
Sean, do you have me down?
Yeah, you're next.
You said J. Oh, I get it.
I don't try to follow my brain patterns. They don't work well. I just don't. I'm trying. No, it's all good.
Welcome to the club.
Welcome to the club. Yeah, but if any of you want to hang out afterwards and just talk, that's cool. If you want to share your stuff, that's cool. If you want to just hang out and listen, that's cool too. All right. I'm so bad at segues. That was my segue to Barbara. She's a lovely human being. She's in the icky Midwest right now, and she's a nice person, and she's got a story. And the stage is yours, Barbara.
Thank you. Yeah, Madeleine, I totally feel you. You know, the same wet I was just complaining about. Oh, I just have a hard time getting used to it when it finally flips over to winter. So anyway, thank you, people. I broke up with an abusive and controlling long-term lover about a little over 5 years ago, and I never thought I could do it. This relationship I was in defined who I was. It determined where I went and with whom I spent my time. And in the beginning, this relationship just was so freeing. And I was witty and spontaneous and fun. But then over time, and especially towards the end, I was left feeling anxious and sad and miserable. And this intense relationship was with alcohol. And for many years, my time was wasted drinking, recovering from drinking, and obsessing about drinking. What people without a compulsion to drink or have any kind of addiction will find really incomprehensible is just how much alcohol becomes our primary attachment, with everything and everyone else we love coming in like a distant second. We come to crave it like a lover because alcohol is like being in love. That and like dark chocolate and sex, and well, they trigger a cascade of endorphins, which are the brain's natural feel-good opioids, and it causes this rush of euphoria. And then our lives we spend chasing after this feeling, and we become tethered to accessing alcohol. Another misunderstood aspect of addiction is that most of us hide it very well. And this is made easier because, you know what, most people really don't want to see it or deal with it. It makes them uncomfortable. So as long as the drunken behavior doesn't affect them, they can ignore it. You know, I got buzzed or drunk almost every night, yet I was a high functioning in my day-to-day life. And luckily, I never had a DUI, but it wasn't for lack of opportunity. I never drank at work. I never missed a day due to being hungover. I worked through it as proof that I wasn't addicted, because if I didn't, I would have to admit I had a problem. Instead, I did my penance by overcompensating, by being so agreeable, so ingratiating, and I became a pro at pretending I remembered what I'd said or done when I'd blacked out. I lived in a state of constant anxiety, afraid my excessive drinking was going to be called out, and then I'd be abandoned by my family and friends if I didn't quit. And the very idea of quitting drinking is unimaginable to someone who's addicted. It's difficult to describe how hard my heart clenched at the thought of never being able to take another drink. I used to feel so ashamed, and I wondered, like, what was wrong with me? Why can't I control my drinking like my friends? I've since learned that this propensity for addiction is a genetic hand-me-down. And in my case, it comes from both sides of my family, with my maternal grandmother and my father being the two who were most profoundly lost to alcohol. I never met my prodigal grandma, as I call her, because her nonstop drinking and the carousing that went with it was the main reason my grandfather divorced her and took custody of my mother and my aunt. My grandmother died at 61 from a heart attack, no doubt caused in part by her years of drinking. My father was a real Jekyll and Hyde drunk. He went from being a smart, affable, charming man when sober, or so I'm told because I never met that man, to this crazy and abusive one when drunk. He remained faithful to his liquid lover to the end, and it was the main cause of his uncontrolled diabetes that killed him at the age of 69. So the bricking of my road to alcohol abuse was laid down by my genes, but learning alcohol would help me escape or numb life's pains and unpleasantness is what so beguiled me into thinking that it was my best friend. The first time I got drunk, I was a freshman in high school, and it was after a humiliating encounter with a popular girl during gym class. You know, at 13, I didn't have a high degree of emotional intelligence and was often awkward in my attempts to make friends. Well, that day, I playfully bounced a basketball off the back of her head, thinking that was a cool way to get her attention. And I was so wrong. She turned and yelled at me in front of the whole class, like, "Barbara, you're such a jerk. Nobody here likes you." I was so crushed and so embarrassed, I went weeping into the locker room, and I wouldn't come out for the rest of the period. I just wanted to disappear. And later that day, I found that alcohol would let me do just that. After school, a friend and I went back to my house and got shit-faced and then really sick on my mother's bottle of Mogan David Concord grape wine. But it did numb me to the awful pain and the shame I felt from being called out by that girl. And that was the start of using alcohol to escape, though it did take years for my drinking to escalate from being a part of my life, like I was just dating it, to being its like daily focus, like going steady. Then The morning after getting blackout drunk at my St. Patrick's Day party in 2015, I awoke with a horrible hangover. I looked in the mirror and I saw a tired, sad woman who had had a story to tell, but she just couldn't remember it. And something sane within me finally had had enough of feeling like shit and feeling ashamed of being in this hazy state of chronic misery. And I knew I had to find a way to break the spell that alcohol had cast over me. Now, I've never considered 12-step programs and their abstinence-only mindset for many reasons, but mostly because I didn't want to quit drinking and I didn't believe it was at all possible. I just wanted to be a normal woman who had a couple glasses of wine, a couple nights a week, and not a bottle or more of wine every night of the week. So over the next year, I was searching online and I found something that was called the Cure for Alcoholism. And I discovered something called the Sinclair Method. It's a science-based one. And it's a better living through chemistry miracle, where one little pill called naltrexone lets me no longer be held in alcohol's thrall. It took me 6 months to screw up my courage to order the pills on the online pharmacy because I was so afraid if it didn't work that I would be doomed to drink to death like my grandmother and my father before me. I wanted to see if they will work before I stopped lying to my doctor and outed myself as someone with a person with AUD or alcohol use disorder. Well, it does work. I take a 50 milligram pill an hour before I'm going to have a drink, giving it time to bind to my brain's endorphin receptors. So when the endorphins flow after taking a drink, my brain doesn't get that expected kick, and the equation of booze equals euphoria becomes a null one. And over a short period of time, compliantly taking the pill before having a drink, the brain unlearns this connection altogether and the cravings for alcohol cease. So 5 years ago, I took my first pill, and it was as if this compulsive drinking switch in my brain was just thrown into the off position. I was amazed that I was able to sip one drink during dinner and I didn't crave another one. And instead of anxiously looking to flag the waiter down to bring me another drink, I actually just sat there and enjoyed conversing with my friends. It was the first time in my life that I had a drink and it didn't have me. You know, and there are times now during these last 5 years that I wonder, like, how did I believe I couldn't live without it? You know, and then I laugh because, you know what, it's the same kind of question of like, what did I see in him? You know, that I always ask after I've fallen out of love with someone. So now this lover, this alcohol that I couldn't get enough of, has been permanently friend zoned. Thank you.
Thanks, Barbara. What are you drinking? I so need to know what you're drinking. It's awesome. I just think it would have been perfect. I'm not.
No, actually,
got a big drink, like a big beer right there. It'd have been a really interesting choice for the story.
Well, actually, I took an naltrexone about an hour and a half ago, and I thought after this, I'm going to have like a beer. I mean, literally, I drink maybe once or twice a week. I have like a glass of wine or what. I mean, and for someone who was so addicted, you have no idea.
Yeah.
What a change that is. So
and I never compare, but as someone who struggled with it, I do think I understand the compulsion. And
it's
like the idea of just having a drink and then is kind of hard for me to understand. I'm not on that medication. I do drink a bit too much. And I have a question for you. If I said just one,
that's fine.
We'll move on to Jay's story. You know, when people finally figure it out, whether it's like, let's say, medication for depression, right? Or medication for addiction. And I think a lot of people on the outside think, oh my God, everything's good now. Now, one, not always true, but for you, and I'm sort of equating it to my own experience with medication, was there a sense of like, I'm glad I've got it handled, but in a way you see more clearly the damage that it did and you wish that you had sort of figured it out earlier? Does that make sense?
Oh yeah. For sure. I'm actually a moderator on a site called Option Saves Lives,
Mhm.
which is dedicated to the Sinclair Method. And I'm always so thrilled when I see young people,
Yeah.
I tell them, oh, dude or dudette. I wish I had discovered this years ago.
Yeah.
But like Madeleine says, my glasses and my can right now is half full.
Right.
And you know what? I'm glad I found it when I did, and I couldn't be happier. The thing I found the most amazing. This is my OG story, but this is a shortened version of one I told. Is that all that guilt and shame and that ingratiating behavior that pretty much evaporated?
Mm.
I
So
mean, it
it's
wasn't
kinda-
like, it just because I wasn't doing the shit anymore. I wasn't driving drunk and I wasn't acting out and
Clears
didn't
it
have to
out. Clears the
pretend.
brain out, right?
Yeah, I didn't have to pretend that I remembered, oh yeah, it was fun, wasn't it? And I
Mhm.
couldn't remember a thing. So once all those behaviors stopped, I really didn't have a lot to feel ashamed for, except just being a normal fool sober, but so
I know for me, when I've like my waves and troughs of, especially when I'm feeling better,
Mhm.
and this is not really related to addiction, but more like depression, anxiety. And I don't think everyone's this way at all. My therapist says I have a quote regret orientation. I learned that expression from him. But that like, oh, I'm feeling better, and yeah, that's great. But now I know what I missed. Like,
Mhm.
oh, like I'm clear. Oh man, if I had any feeling like this in my 20s or 30s, of course that doesn't really like do anything for me, but that's where my brain sometimes goes, and it's really hard to get out of that. Like
Yeah.
it's a double-edged, is it a double-edged sword? I don't know what it's called. There's an expression there that I'm not getting, but
Yeah, it's
complicated is what I'm saying, I suppose.
yeah, definitely. But I tell you, the one thing another thing I've learned from all this
Mhm.
by seeing how it works is that we're sacks of chemicals.
Yeah.
And it allows me to understand people who have like a brain difference in their
Yep.
chemicals, like bipolar,
Yep.
schizophrenia,
Yep.
depression.
Yep.
It really, it's like you see, like we are sacks of chemicals.
And
You
you
know?
can really, and this is a conversation for another day.
Yeah, I know, right?
But no, here's what I mean though. You could take that even further if one chooses to someone does a really bad thing to somebody else, and you could argue they're chemicals,
Yeah,
right? Like, and I'm not justifying it. I'm not justifying their deeds. But if
right.
we're just a sack of chemicals, and I tend to agree, then everything we do is sort of in part
Mhm.
sparked by or influenced by those chemicals.
Exactly.
It's
Exactly.
complicated. It's complicated.
Yes, we are complicated bitches.
I got give me some Buddha. All right. Thanks again, Barbara. All right, Jay in San Diego. I'm going to unmute you and spotlight you, and we're going to hear your story if that's cool.
Hi.
Thanks for being here.
Once I fell into a 6-week-long downward spiral. My boyfriend and I broke up despite our mutual love for cats and raves. I unwisely had a rebound with a bass player. I had a health crisis while uninsured, and I jeopardized my career by procrastinating a project that was due by Christmas. I was doomed. It was like the ghosts of Christmas warning Ebenezer Scrooge, like, change your ways or else doom. If I had believed in God, it would have been the time to pray. But I grew up without religion and had always been atheist. So what I did was throw myself into work violently to distract myself. And I worked 80 hours a week for a few weeks in a row. I was not sleeping or eating. I was refusing to feel feelings. And there was so little time to spare that I dropped off the project on my way to Phoenix for Christmas. And as soon as it left my hands, like, extreme relief and exhaustion just, completely set in. All week, I hadn't slept more than 6 hours. So I was feeling woozy. I chugged some coffee and I got on the 8 freeway. It's a very busy freeway in holiday traffic. I started to nod off, but I jerked myself awake. And then it happened again and again. And in my misery, I made a life-changing decision. This I would power through full steam ahead. I turned up the music and I stayed in the fast lane. I just didn't care. The next thing I knew, I regained consciousness as my car hit gravel. I was drifting off of the freeway, and instead of gently decelerating and turning with the skid, I failed driver instructors everywhere by slamming the brakes and yanking the wheel at 85 miles per hour. I overcorrected and started to skid in a circle. And as I spun to 90 degrees, it was clear that my car was going to crash. It continued around 180 degrees, and I was facing all of that traffic behind me. I made eye contact with the driver behind me, and I will never forget his shocked expression. I was horrified, like not even about what might happen to me, but about, this car pileup that was going to ensue and all of the injuries and maybe even deaths, all my fault. I realized like these were actual people, families headed on vacation, and here I was like a depressed jerk about to kill them, or at the very least, make them watch me kill myself. I lost sight as my car swept around 200 degrees, and that is when the car caught air and it started to flip. So coincidence number one was the car that rolled off of the freeway away from the traffic. I had just missed the rocky cliffs and the boulders. The ground had just been softened by the rain. My car crunched and it bounced. I closed my eyes to protect them from the falling, the flying glass that was breaking around me. And by the time that it rolled a second time, I knew I could not stop this. It was freeing. It was like the most peaceful feeling I had ever experienced. As my car slammed and rolled a third time, I sensed a presence in the car. Like my car was filling with warmth and light. Even with my eyes closed, it felt bright. And I felt safe, like on these roller coasters that I've been riding ever since I was barely tall enough. Like it was like thrilling, but I did not feel threatened. As my car hit the ground again, I was basking in comfort. I did not feel pain. I didn't get impaled as far as I could tell. And I was conscious of all 5 rolls until my car finally stopped upside down with me hanging from my seatbelt. Someone ran over, and all I could say was the F word. And he said, "We're EMTs." And I said the F word again. I'm censoring, there's a small child here. Then I said, "Wait, how'd you get here so fast?" Coincidence number 2, a car full of off-duty paramedics had been behind me and saw it all. They quickly unbuckled me and pulled me through the window because my car was smoking and they were afraid that it might explode. And so they're getting me set up with like neck braces and things that they happen to have in their car as we waited for the fire trucks. And I surveyed all these heavy, dangerous things in my car that were now scattered all over the ground. There was like a 100-pound suitcase in my back seat. There were loose Christmas presents, which was like weirdly including things like hardback books, boots, high heels, a kitchen knife. There was also a metal water bottle that was now all dented up, rolled coins, my glasses flew into the shrubs without a scratch. Same with my GPS and my phone. I found them all later. Coincidence number 3, nothing hit or cut me the whole time that we were rolling around. I had no bruises or even a scratch. So a sheriff, a tow truck driver, and EMTs all showed up and each asked, "Where's the driver?" Meaning, where's the body? And then they were shocked each time that I would, wave and say, "It's me." I heard them telling stories about me, like the way that you would talk about a celebrity who showed up at your party. They were taking pictures of my upside down car with the bumper like 20 feet away, not for evidence, but for Facebook or whatever. So coincidence number 4 was that no other cars were involved in the crash. So we waited for the tow truck to flip my car over, and this grizzled old cop told me about a World War II pilot who was hit and he jumped out of his plane without a chute. He fell 2 miles and yet he landed in a field and he somehow survived. "I'm telling you this," he said, "because you're the pilot who bailed and lived." But if only he'd known like how I really had bailed on life. This was, my fault. But the tow truck driver said, "Wow, sheriff's in a good mood. He don't see accidents like that where people live. You made his day." So I guess I had. And there have been studies done on people who've had near-death experiences, who saw the light, and they're almost always people who are religious. And so it could be said, people who expect to have a life after death type experience are most likely to have one. But that didn't apply to me. So that presence that I'd felt in the car, I don't need to know what it was. And God forbid I become one of those people who can't shut up about Jesus. But all of those little coincidences that added up to one big miracle of me surviving this unconscious suicide attempt, it did feel like something more was at work. And I have spent years in therapy. I eat now, I sleep now, but it did take flipping upside down for me to get a new perspective on the life that I had nearly thrown away. I sought death and I lost. And in the process, I won. Thank you.
Thanks, Jay. Great job. Thank you so much. So I don't know if you know this. I've got this podcast that I've been doing since last year called Suicide Noted. It's pretty straightforward. I just interview people who have an attempt. This isn't a pitch for you to come on.
I didn't know that.
If you want to, I mean, you're always welcome, because it's actually really hard to find people who are willing to talk about that. But my question is, so you consider that an attempt?
Yeah, because I knew I was falling asleep. And yeah, like it was like a conscious decision almost.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the questions I get asked sometimes when people like reach out to me is, how do you define attempt? And I don't have an answer. I say, well, that you define it. Like if you think it's an attempt, who am I to say otherwise, So
Right.
Wow. What do you think it was? Have you ever put words to it?
No, but I would say that I don't call myself an atheist anymore. Like I do feel like there was, whatever it was, I felt like it was something, it was an experience that saved my life and improved the life that I had been living and allowed me to, create a much better life for myself now.
So cool.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much.
Thanks.
And thanks, Barbara and Erica and Madeline and everyone who showed up. I'm going to just stop recording now. So if you're seeing this, whether you're live or I didn't go on Facebook Live. I usually do that. Oh, well, next time I will, but I'm going to make this a little video and I'll put it on YouTube and Facebook and I'll share it with you all and you can use it. But I'm going to stop the recording now. We can just unmute and chat a little bit. And if that's not your jam, you want to skedaddle, I get it. So thanks for being here. Okay, bye.